Temperature outside is -30 degrees. The wind is cutting through everything. You have no insulated walls, no heating system, no electricity. No stored food in a freezer. You have your body, a fire, and the people around you. That is all. And you have to survive tonight. You have to survive tomorrow. You have to survive the next 50,000 years. Because that is exactly what your ancestors did. For roughly 100,000 years. From around 115,000 to 11,700 years ago. The Earth was locked inside a glacial period so severe that ice sheets 2 miles thick crushed northern Europe and North America flat. Sea levels dropped by more than 400 feet. Vast stretches of land that are now ocean floor were dry, walkable ground. The world your ancestors were born into looked nothing like the one you live in today. They not only endured it, they spread across it. They painted on its cave walls. They buried their dead with ceremony. They thrived. So how did they actually do it? The first thing you have to understand is what the Ice Age actually felt like on the ground. In geological terms. Not in ice core data. But in the body in real time. The last glacial maximum. The peak of the last Ice Age. Hit around 20,000 years ago. Temperatures in Europe were on average 10 to 15 degrees Celsius colder than today. That does not sound catastrophic until you realize the difference is the same gap between a warm spring afternoon and the inside of a commercial freezer. The Mammoth steppe that stretched across what is now Russia, Ukraine, and Central Asia was not a frozen wasteland. It was a cold, windswept grassland teeming with megafauna. Woolly mammoths, cave lions, giant deer with antlers spanning 12 feet. Your ancestors did not inherit a dead planet. They inherited a dangerous, resource-rich world that demanded everything from them. The first strategy was shelter, and it was more sophisticated than you might imagine. Archaeological evidence from sites like Prehistoric in Ukraine, excavated extensively in the 1960s and 1970s, reveals something extraordinary. Your ancestors were building semi-permanent structures using the bones of woolly mammoths. Massive femur bones interlocked as walls. Skulls stacked as foundations. Hundreds of mammoth bones used in a single dwelling. These were not crude lean-tos. These were engineered structures designed to trap heat, block wind, and last the season. Archaeologist Olga Sofer, who studied these sites in depth, described them as architectural achievements, not accidents. In regions where trees were scarce and stone was unavailable, your ancestors looked at the largest land animals on Earth and saw building material. In areas where stone was accessible, they went deeper. Caves offered consistent temperature regulation. The interior of a cave, insulated by solid rock, stays at a fairly stable temperature year-round, usually around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. Not warm by modern standards, but survival warmer than -30 outside. Chauvet Cave in southern France, which contains some of the oldest known cave paintings, dating back roughly 36,000 years, was not just an art gallery, it was a refuge. Your ancestors chose these spaces deliberately, oriented the entrance away from prevailing winds, and positioned hearths to maximize heat distribution inside the space. Speaking of fire, you cannot survive the Ice Age without fire. And your ancestors understood fire in ways that go far beyond what most people realize. Experimental archaeologist Dennis Sandgaith has studied fire use across dozens of Paleolithic sites across Europe, and has noted a striking pattern. Neanderthals, your close evolutionary cousins who lived alongside early modern humans in Europe, had inconsistent fire use. Some sites show evidence of regular hearths. Others show none at all, even during cold periods. Early modern humans, your direct ancestors, were different. Fire evidence at their sites is almost universal, almost continuous. Fire was not a tool they reached for in emergencies. It was the center of everything. Cooking, protection from predators. Light for working after dark. Social gathering. Signaling. Fire was infrastructure. And making fire was a skill your ancestors trained for. Flint and pyrite struck together produce a spark. Certain fungi dried and compressed into tinder catch that spark reliably. The bow drill method, friction-based fire starting, was almost certainly in use by this period. Your ancestors did not stumble into warmth. They built, maintained, and passed the knowledge of it down through generations. Fire and shelter only solve one piece of the survival equation. The harder problem was food. In summer and early autumn, the mammoth steppe was productive. Seeds and tubers were available. Animals were huntable. Your ancestors gathered intensively, processed food for storage, and built caloric reserves. Ethnobotanist and anthropologist Brian Hayden, who has studied hunter-gatherer storage systems extensively, argues that Ice Age people were not living hand-to-mouth. They were strategic surplus builders. Evidence from sites like Pavlov in the Czech Republic shows dense concentrations of animal bones, stone tools, and hearths that indicate repeated seasonal occupation. Not random wandering. These were base camps, planned returns to known productive zones. Winter changed everything. Vegetation largely disappeared. Animals dispersed or hibernated. The caloric math became brutal. A human body at rest in cold conditions burns significantly more energy just to maintain core temperature. Add to that the physical demands of moving through snow, collecting wood, maintaining shelters, and the daily energy deficit becomes enormous. Your ancestors solved this with fat, not protein. This is one of the most important and least understood facts about Ice Age survival. Lean meat alone cannot keep you alive in extreme cold. A condition called rabbit starvation, documented by anthropologists during their time with Arctic peoples in the early 20th century, describes the fatal outcome of eating only lean protein without fat. Your body cannot process protein efficiently enough to generate the sustained energy and warmth cold survival demands. Your ancestors knew this. They targeted the fattest animals. They cracked bones to extract marrow. They rendered fat from organs and stored it. They prized the tongue, the liver, the brain, the fatty intestines of large game. A single woolly mammoth provided not just tons of meat, but hundreds of kilograms of fat, enough to feed a group through weeks of cold. And hunting a woolly mammoth required more than courage. It required coordination. This is where the social structure of your ancestors becomes the real story. No single human can kill a woolly mammoth. A woolly mammoth stood roughly 11 foot tall at the shoulder and weighed up to 6 tons. Add tusks up to 15 feet long. It was in almost every measurable sense unkillable by an individual, but a coordinated group of hunters. Using drive techniques, terrain features like cliffs or river crossings, and projectile weapons to bring one down. Anthropologist and evolutionary biologist Sarah Brosnan has written about the relationship between cooperation and survival in ancestral humans, noting that the social brain, the capacity for complex coordination, trust, and shared planning, was the real adaptive advantage your ancestors had over both prey and competing predators. Your ancestors were not surviving the Ice Age as individuals. They were surviving it as networks. That social network extended beyond the hunt. Recent research on skeletal remains from Ice Age sites in Europe and Russia has revealed evidence of individuals who survived severe physical injuries, broken limbs that healed correctly, degenerative conditions that would have prevented normal hunting and foraging, disabilities that required years of care from others to survive. 2017 analysis published in Antiquity, examining skeletal remains from sites across Europe, found that care of the sick and disabled was not rare in Ice Age communities. It was systematic. Your ancestors kept each other alive. They also kept each other mentally alive. This is the part of Ice Age survival that rarely gets discussed. The psychological dimension. Darkness of a northern winter during the Ice Age was immense. 17 hours of darkness per day. Cold that confined people to small smoky shelters for weeks at a stretch. Food anxiety. The cumulative weight of a world that never offered easy comfort. And yet the cave art your ancestors left behind. At Lascaux, at Altamira, at El Castillo. Is not the art of desperate broken people. It is complex, intentional, detailed, emotionally expressive work. Images of animals rendered with a fluency and observation that implies years of practice and deep aesthetic intent. Anthropologist Ian Davidson, who has studied Paleolithic art for decades, argues that symbolic thought, the capacity to represent the world in images and stories, was not a luxury your ancestors added onto survival. It was survival, the ritual, the stories, the shared symbols encoded in those cave walls created social cohesion, transmitted ecological knowledge across generations, and gave meaning to an existence that could otherwise have collapsed under its own harshness. The clothing also cannot be overlooked. Your ancestors were tailoring animal skins with needles made from bone, documented at sites like Sungir in Russia, dated to around 34,000 years ago. The burial at Sungir includes an individual dressed in clothing, decorated with thousands of ivory beads, each carved individually, representing an estimated 10,000 hours of labor. This was not just clothing. This was engineered insulation, layered, fitted to the body, designed to manage moisture and trap air. It was the functional equivalent of a modern Arctic survival suit. Your ancestors had already solved the physics of cold weather clothing 34,000 years before Gore-Tex existed. So when you add it all up, shelter built from mammoth bone, fire as constant infrastructure, fat as the caloric foundation of survival, coordinated hunting of megafauna, care of the sick and injured, clothing engineered for thermal efficiency, and ritual as psychological glue. Your ancestors were not clinging to the edge of extinction during the Ice Age. They were building a civilization not in the modern political sense, but in the deeper sense of a complex, interconnected system of human knowledge and human care. The Ice Age did not break them. And here is the thing that should stop you for a moment. Every adaptation your ancestors developed during 100,000 years of survival in extreme cold is still encoded somewhere in you. Your body still runs its cold response systems, shunting blood from the extremities, ramping up metabolic heat production, craving calorie-dense food in winter. Your brain still activates its deepest social bonding circuits under collective stress. The capacity for cooperation that let a group of humans take down an animal 6 tons. Heavier than any of them is the same capacity you use every time you trust a colleague, rely on a friend, or simply believe that the person next to you will not let you fall. The temperature outside is -30 degrees. You have your body afire and the people around you. For your ancestors that turned out to be enough for everything.